and thank you for listening to today's episode of JATCast, the official podcast of the Journal of Athletic Training. I'm your host, Luke Donovan. For this second episode of the month, I will discuss the findings of an article from the most recent special issue of JAT centered around work-life balance titled, Work and Life in the Sport Industry, a review of work-life interface experiences among athletic employees, authored by Drs. Jeffrey Graham and Allison Smith from the University of Tennessee and the University of New Mexico. As a reminder, the article discussed today can be found on the JAT website, natajournals.org. And please remember that all content from JAT is open access to all readers, thanks to the funding from the National Athletic Trainers Association. First step, surveying the scene. A clear picture of the work-life interface in the sport industry continues to develop as the industry, society, and people change. Having an understanding of the work-life interface is beneficial as it may have the potential to influence critical elements of employment, such as life satisfaction, job satisfaction, career retention, and positive work engagement. Before moving forward, let's define some key terms. First, work-life interface is the overall description encapsulating the dynamic and nuanced interactions and tensions surrounding work and personal life. Work-life balance is the satisfaction at meeting work and personal life demands. Work-life balance is independent of conflict and enrichment, which means that balance is neither the absence of conflict nor the presence of enrichment. Work-life conflict is where the mutual incompatibility of work demands and expectations can manifest in resources and roles. Finally, work-life enrichment is when the experiences, relationships, and benefits of one life role improve the quality of life in another role. Much of the research on work-life interface in the sport industry focuses on coaches and athletic trainers. Coaches are of particular interest because of the demanding job pressures, publicly visible and criticized performances, irregular work schedules, broad and competing stakeholder demands that accompany the job. For very similar reasons, athletic trainers, who are vested in the health and welfare of athletes, are also frequently studied in the context of work-life interface. In addition to working odd hours, unpredictable competition season, working nights and weekends, athletic trainers are also commonly being employed by non-medical professionals through an athletic department, whose success is often quantified through athletic and financial successes. As the sport industry continues to expand, it is important to take incremental pauses to critically appraise the nature and extent of existing literature. As such, the purpose of this study was to provide an up-to-date review on the work-life interface in the sport literature with a focus on research being conducted on coaches, athletic trainers, and other sport personnel. The authors completed a scoping review, which is a process of mapping the existing literature in a given area of study. This technique can be especially useful when the topic is somewhat broad. The authors followed the general guidelines of scoping review, which are 1. Identify the research question, 2. Identify relevant studies, 3. Select the studies, 4. Chart the data, and 5. Collate, summarize, and report the results. The authors searched 3 electronic databases using a combination of search terms and reviewed all returned articles for relevancy to the research question. At the end of this process, 69 articles were included in the study. Here are the results. Of the selected articles, 37 focus on a mixed sample of men and women. 17 focus exclusively on women, 9 on men, while 6 did not report. A little over 80% of the investigations originated in the U.S. Most participants were athletic trainers, about 50%, or coaches at nearly 30%. In addition, 38 of the 69 included articles were published between 2016 and 2020. This finding suggests a rapid expansion of scholarship related to work-life interface within the sport industry. Despite this uptick in research, there are several areas in the literature that warrant clarification or expansion. Here are some of the identified gaps. First, there needs to be consensus on terms and definitions related to work-life interface. One example being the use of work-family language rather than work-life language in instances where family dynamics were not specifically being measured. Other examples of terms being misused were balance and conflict. Another gap that requires attention is advancing scholarship on enrichment and characterizing the athlete perspective. In addition, this literature review highlighted the relatively small number of studies focused on populations outside of the United States. Input from people working in sport who have different priorities, cultures, experiences, and perspective on negotiating work and non-work responsibilities will greatly enhance the literature and devise strategies to gain work-life balance. In summary, this study accomplished a few key points. First, it highlighted that athletic trainers, coaches, and other athletic industry employees experience challenges in balancing the work-life interface. Much of the discourse was brought on by organizational sources such as work demands, lack of autonomy, low salaries, long hours, inadequate staffing. In addition, the study found that most coping strategies for improving work-life balance and decreasing work-life conflict primarily stem from the individual level. Finally, and the overall purpose of the study, the authors provided insight to the theoretical and practical sides of the work-life interface, which hopefully will extend and shape future research studies to continue to improve the work-life interface of employees within the sport industry through enrichment opportunities and organizational level coping solutions. Well, that's it for today's JATcast. Please remember to rate and subscribe to the podcast, which is available on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube, and Stitcher. You can find out more information about upcoming podcasts and other JAT events on our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram accounts at JAT_NATA. Thank you for listening, and keep a lookout for next month's JATcast.